For example, I'm an irregular migrant and I want to embark on a trip. How do I go about this?
If you plan to leave the country, you need to consider why you're leaving. For example, we've had cases where people are leaving because they are not able to get jobs. The healthcare system is nothing to write home about, and you're wondering, am I going to raise a family in here? So one would need to look at, and what are my options? The next thing is, what are my options? If you are a professional, for instance, it will be easier for you to get an opportunity to work in one of the modernized countries. So you have to look at that as well. And what is the cost? I think it's important that one runs a cost-benefit analysis, because what we see is lots of people have that impression that the roads are paved with gold, and we all know that that's not the case. And once one leaves with that impression, you find out that sometimes some people even turn out worse than they were in Nigeria. Not worse, so to say, but worse in the sense that they may not be able to meet that living standard that they have in Nigeria. So there are so many factors that you have to consider before you embark on that trip.
At the point of entry into another country, we hear that regardless of one's visa, final entry rests with the immigration of that country. Why is this?
I think it's important one understands the essence of a visa. The visa itself is not a right of entry. It's a conditional right. And what that means is that once you arrive at the port of entry, whether it's a seaport or an airport, the immigration service still have the right to ask you questions to determine whether you would, at the end of the day, leave their country as you have told your consular officer when you were applying for the visa. And what we see is because some people are really desperate and they need to get that visa at all costs, they tend to say lots of nice things to get the visa. But upon entry, questions like where would you be staying, which are questions you would ordinarily expect, and where would you be staying, how long will you stay, how much do you have to sustain yourself while you are here. If you're unable to answer those questions, what it does is it triggers the mindset with the immigration officer that I don't think this person is going to leave. A very popular example is Nigerians that go to the US to give birth. At some point it became a trend that you have to go to the US to give birth, because automatically when your child is born in the US, then they get citizenship. But what we see is the information they give here is different from the information they give when they get to the... And it's important for every applicant to know that the system, the way the system is run, the information you give here is also with the immigration officer as you are entering. So if you tell them here that, oh, I'm going to school, I'm going for holiday, and you get there and you say, no, I'm going to give birth, they have a right to refuse your entry and also cancel the visa.
What do you think about Canada's Refugee Board making it harder for Nigerians seeking asylum in their country? We hear that some of the lawyers there are taking it up.
I believe there's a lapse with the immigration laws. Now, the lapse I say there is that the way their refugee laws are in the way their refugee laws are, they should be able to reduce the number of people that are coming in, be able to sift those that are actually genuine refugees. And that I think is where the problem is, because some people use that loophole to say, oh, they come through the US borders and they now get in and they claim asylum now. So the government has to, and I think they are already working on that at the moment. Recently, I was informed that Canadian officers are now scrutinizing U.S. visa applications as well. They're working with the U.S. The embassy, the consulate in Nigeria, to check Nigerians that they suspect may want to travel to the U.S. and enter Canada through the U.S. borders. So it's something that the Canadian government has to look at, but it's also important that they balance it, because the reason why migration it affects the economy is the fact that so many of these migrants, by the time they are assimilated, they actually become really hard-working individuals and they add to the economy. So it's now how Canada is now able to balance the cost of having so many migrants, irregular migrants or refugees come into the country, and also the benefit that we enjoy from having so many foreigners come into our country at this time.